Prospect House Media.
And now, prepare yourself for the only weekly podcast you won't want to miss. Welcome to the Ameritocracy Show with Troy Edgar, live from our studios in Los Angeles and Washington, D.C.
Everybody, I am Troy Edgar and welcome to the Ameritocracy Show. Thank you for tuning in and checking it out. It is greatly appreciated. This podcast examines the conditions for personal and economic growth and opportunity across America. This week, I traveled to Toyota's North American headquarters to meet with IT executive and general manager Jason Ballard to talk about his background and experience at the company. We started working together in 2014 when Toyota began consolidating their North American sales and manufacturing operations. We discussed the move of Toyota's headquarters to Plano, Texas, the role of technology in the company's operations, and the importance of leadership and continuous improvement. We also touch on the return to office policies and the impact of remote work on collaboration and creativity. Jason emphasizes the need for authentic leadership, building relationships, and being bold in driving change. He also mentions the use of artificial intelligence and conversational AI in improving the employee experiences and productivity. Lastly, Jason shared his insights that highlight the importance of staying connected and thinking like a CEO and embracing new technologies in the automotive industry. I hope you enjoy. Hey, Jason, how you doing?
Pretty good, Troy. How are you?
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for meeting me here in Dallas.
Yeah, no, it was a homecoming for me, coming out here to the headquarters here in Toyota. And, you and I had got to be a part of that whole process that brought Toyota to Plano, Texas. And we'll talk about this a little bit further in here, but, I came in trying to help out the Toyota Motor Sales or TMS side from Torrance, and you were from the manufacturing side in the manufacturing headquarters in Erlanger, Kentucky. And so a lot of good memories here. So it's very nice to be here. I guess just for the listeners, I've been working with Toyota since 2004. Way back in the beginning, and I've been doing a lot of activities there. And I remember, going through the process in 2014, and I remember hearing that Toyota was going to be making a move. And when you start hearing the story behind the scene, and it was covered in the press, so this is nothing out there that we're disclosing, but they were really trying to keep that quiet and try to keep people calm because no one really knew what that meant. As in California, a lot of companies were leaving, so it's like another one's leaving, right. And in Kentucky, who really is, who knows what will happen. But as the story goes, the word got out informally. A reporter picked up on it, and then pretty soon we had to do this process of not only they didn't have a site in Texas, they just had bought property, and they didn't know how they're going to consolidate the organizations fully. They had a vision, and I think that's where you and I kind of came in with our fire equipment on and ready to help as a consultant for myself, and you as an executive and a leader here. So it was a great experience. And then through that process, probably we worked together 2 or 3 years through that. And, I think from my perspective and why I thought it'd be really important to get you on the show is that as an IT leader at a major auto manufacturing, it was interesting that you were very involved with the technology management of making sure the business runs, but also, special projects like, trying to do an integration of a huge company into Plano, Texas, and handle the IT portion. But there was a lot of things that you kind of brought to the table as a leader, the way that you handled your folks and were able to kind of get them to not only buy into the work that had to be done, but you're always focused on professionally developing people. You lived by example. You did it yourself, but you and I talked about this off mic just for a moment before we get into your background. It was like I remember we were just getting ready. They opened up this brand new building, and we moved in here, and we're kind of in we used to do stand-ups like 40 or 50 people because it was such a big project. And the guy next to me goes, I go, man, you're working for Jason Ballard? And he goes, yeah. I go, how's that? He goes, the guy, everybody, he's awesome. But he goes, he assigns us books to read. And every week, we have to kind of come. And, Troy, we're putting in 50, 60 hours, and I just don't have, the time. And I said, well, what do you think of that? And he goes, well, you know what? I fought it for a while. And then after a while, we started having a lot different discussions. Like half the time in the leadership discussions we would have within the team, we wouldn't even be talking about the project. We'd be really trying to talk about how we could be better. And I thought that it was, most of the people were focused tactically and just trying to get through stuff. So, Jason, with that, I think it would be helpful for maybe to get your background and a little bit of what kind of got you here to Toyota and kind of give the listeners that perspective.
Yeah, certainly, Troy. And thanks for the comments there on the professional development. It certainly is a core part of my framework and something that I truly emphasize every day. I've been at Toyota for over 2 decades. So I started in 2003. So I got you by 1 year when you were introduced to Toyota. I've been fortunate. All my time has been in technology, but I've been fortunate to be asked to lead different parts of the organization over those 2 decades. So, I think when it comes to, how do we continue to further develop our people, it's really ingrained in the Toyota DNA around respect for people and continuous improvement. And that continuous improvement is built into how I wake up and operate and then go to bed. So
when you started out, you and I intercepted. You were in Kentucky. Talk about your background and starting up there in Kentucky.
Yeah, certainly. Again, started at the company in 2003. That was before we even had an official manufacturing headquarters in Erlanger, Kentucky. That was when we were just operating out of Toyota Motor Manufacturing, Kentucky, which is our largest vehicle plant in North America, still to this date.
Wow. So, was that out of college? So you went to University of Kentucky, if I remember.
I did. Born and raised in Kentucky. Went to University of Kentucky. I bleed blue.
Oh, okay.
Interesting. I had to pay my way through school. Thankfully, it doesn't cost as much as it does today back then. But, I was one of those that switched careers, still trying to figure out where am I going to land after school. My college roommate, coincidentally, who still works at Toyota as well, was into computers. And I was like, I kind of have an inkling to learn more about this. I actually found a flyer on the campus of someone that was looking for someone to help with building computers and establishing networks, computer networks. So I rip off the tag and give a call, and I talk to this lady who's running her own company called Southland Technologies. And that was back in the time when, you're building your own computers off 35 floppy disks, And so it was a time as well when the software was becoming mature enough to actually network the individual PCs and establish a server. And so I got geeked out on all of that. Of course, she brought me on. I spent like 1.5 years all the way through school, working with her, learning a ton. So really, where I'm at in my career all goes back to her and giving me that chance. And then when I graduated from University of Kentucky, with that experience on the resume, I landed at a Microsoft consulting partner called Kaizen. And they were based out of Louisville, Kentucky. And, Kaizen, again, is a Japanese term, right? Continuous improvement. Mm-hmm. They spelled it, the company, differently. But it was almost like I was getting internal messages to myself. Mm-hmm. You know where the first place that I got a consulting job at?
No.
TMMK.
Oh, wow.
At the plant.
At Georgetown.
In Georgetown.
Wow.
To lead a network optimization project. So I ended up doing 3 tours of duty. I like to call them tours of duty at Toyota. It was pre-Y2K as well. But I used that time as well to mature my consulting, got into training. And then in 2003, that's when Toyota said, hey, you've been here off and on for a little bit. Why don't you stay here longer?
Talk about your journey here at Toyota. Like I said, I noticed that there's kind of my data point's a little aged at this point, but there was kind of 2 paths for IT folks. The hardcore, supporting systems and making sure that, like what you described at TMMK, really the supply chain systems. And it could be keeping the manufacturing line, the logistics, all of that, or it could be the administrative sides of finance, HR, but keeping them alive. And then the other part about, like you said, honing your consulting skills. When I came across you, you were up there in the top. Like you knew technology, but you also knew how to do large scale projects. And so, talk about your path through Toyota. And was it a kind of a planned path where I always say the blackout bingo card. You got to kind of get all these different skills, or did you kind of just get all these great? Toyota's known for opportunity.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, even after being here 21 years, there's still parts of this company that you can peel the layers and be like, wow, I didn't realize that's how it works, right? So that's what I think excites you every day as we grow and change into a software-first mobility company. But, to your question, again, I started as a systems engineer, a computer engineer, more of a technical role in an engineering function. I was fortunate to be promoted within like a year and a half to a manager. So that was my first opportunity to lead people, lead a small team. But I wasn't satisfied with where I was. And I actually remember, Troy, and I still keep it to this day, I actually mapped out how I see my career evolving at Toyota. What position I want to be in, what role I would be in, what age I would be, and I actually asked our VP and CIO at the time for a meeting, and I shared this with her. And it wasn't shortly after she had that I had that meeting with her, I was like, I really want to learn more about our core business. I want to learn how we manufacture, how we build our supply chain solutions. Because I had that conversation, an opportunity opened itself just a few months down the road, and then I switched and pivoted to a different part of IT at the time in more of an app dev type of capacity, but where we face off directly with the functions, right? And we understand what is their core objectives, their goals, what are they trying to achieve, and then how can we advance that on the technology side? And that really, again, that was another pivotal conversation for me that really helped me start to see the different sides of IT and how I could really add the most value was understanding like our true objectives of this company.
Yeah, I've been to, I won't say I've been to all of them, but out of the 10 that were around when I was here, probably eight of them, and then up in Canada. I started out at Boeing, after I got out of the Navy and was in manufacturing MRP, and then worked my way through. You said you got technically geeky. I love being on a manufacturing floor. I love seeing things being built, and when you're working in aerospace, I was at McDonnell Douglas, then we were bought by Boeing. Each plane, 300,000 parts. There's a lot of come together that needs to happen. So that side of IT, the technical part of getting something built, very complex. And then it's interesting at Toyota, like the last period that I was here, a lot of it was at the administrative side, finance, HR, and payroll, being able to try to get all of the pieces together. And some people, the thing I loved about Toyota, it's like what you just explained, is you get the full tour of duty, because I see a lot of different companies in the type of work I do. Some people spend their whole time in that one area, and they're the best at it. But I'm just like, God, what if they were able to see all these other areas? And again, Jason, that's another reason I wanted to kind of get you on here, because I wanted people to kind of hear a little bit of your experience that's out there. As you've now, let's kind of plant a flag into today, like your role today, because I want to talk to you about a couple different topics that's pertinent for today. But let's talk about your current role.
Yeah, so today I actually am, again, very fortunate to lead two different departments. One is called Digital Platform Engineering and Architecture. It's a great team. It's very focused on our productivity and collaboration tools, our cloud and developer experiences, all of our platform engineering. So really this team is responsible for the 40,000 plus team members, the majority of the software they use today, and then we span across 135 sites across North America where there's connectivity that we have to ensure is working each and every day. Then I'm also, since late 2021, our current CIO informed me about a new battery plant that we're going to be standing up in North Carolina. She asked me with my manufacturing background if I would be the executive lead for our division for that stand-up and helping choosing the right technologies to build this first-of-a-kind plant, battery plant, that we've never done before in North Carolina. So I also lead what we call BEV platform department, which is really focused on not only as we shift into producing electric vehicles, but the batteries themselves, but the battery packs and how those get assembled, and then eventually some of our future state manufacturing capabilities that we're going to be delivering for several new North American models by the end of before 2030. I have responsibility for the technology selection and those activities.
Yeah, the part I loved about seeing Toyota in action when it comes to manufacturing, which is I think the brand big time in quality. I remember going up to Canada to see the Corollas being built up there, and I spent some time up there, and it was interesting. As they put, basically they produce about 1,400 cars a day, and but you walk to the beginning of the line to see like raw metal and stuff coming in, and then you walk to the back and see final inspection. And I can imagine them applying that to batteries and to take that to the next level and scale. Got to be exciting from where you're at right now.
It's very exciting. Like you said, as we're approaching the start of production in 2025, sleepless nights are starting to creep up.
Yeah.
But like you said, it's more of a chemical operation, right? So it's not like something we've done in our vehicle or unit plants. And then also like the volume. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of batteries being produced, and it's going to be a 24/7 operation as well. So that creates some different characteristics about how you organize the technology portfolio, how you think about resiliency, security, and things like that.
Yeah. We talk about different things that we read and stuff a lot when we talk through. And, I had just read that book, Elon Musk, by Walter Isaacson, and he talks about trying to get battery plants up and kind of going through and his kind of travails at Tesla. And it's, kind of a interesting aside is that, Tesla big manufacturing spot is in Fremont, California, which used to be the Toyota plant.
That's
and one of my things that I had focused on early on was Toyota trying to get out of that plant, because I think it was a co-partnership with GM or one of the other automotives, and we were trying to, but there was a lot of stuff. So it's interesting, the whole battery process. That'll be the key to this whole hybrid and electric battery powered automobiles. And so let me ask you this. So over probably the last year or so, I've been kind of keeping track of you and different stuff that you're kind of focused on. And I noticed that, a lot of the stuff that you had kind of going out there around digital transformation. And there was a recent article that kind of had profiled you back in, I think it was just December. And, it talked about looking at the digital transformation using AI for a lot of different stuff. And, obviously my day job at IBM, I'm focused a lot with, significant amount of AI stuff, especially around supply chain. But, what's interesting is that they had a quote in there from the author. This wasn't you. And the quote was like, that you guys are focused on a journey from RPA, or robotic process automation, to conversational in Gen AI. And I was just kind of curious, like the conversational part of it, because you do a lot of work in the help desk area. Is that, could you talk a little bit about what type of activity that you've got going that you talked about in the article?
Yeah, certainly. So, with artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies, you're always trying to figure out, like, how could you best position that within the company? One of the things that I'm very keen on, though, is that you're not selecting technology for the sake of new technology, right? It has to have a purpose. It has to address a problem or an opportunity. The one thing that stands out for the battery plant, just to talk about that for a second, is it's truly like a greenfield, like a new operation. So there's nothing pre-existing that we have to say that we have to go in with these sets of systems. So we've had this opportunity to kind of dream and think big on how we'd like to start that plant. And so we've definitely identified some opportunities where we can use artificial intelligence, machine learning, and then even some generative AI capabilities there. But when you think about how we run our headquarters and all of our operations across R&D, manufacturing, and sales, you really start to hone in on what's the employee experience like. And like you said, back in, when we announced we were moving our headquarters from sales and manufacturing into North Dallas to create this one Toyota headquarters, there was a lot that had to come together with disparate sales and manufacturing systems, a lot of duplication. And so it's always been, I would say for this last decade, to really focus on what that digital employee experience is, what the journey looks like. And so a couple of years ago, it's got 2.5 years ago, I'm not sure about you, but like the worst thing I hate to do is if I have to call the bank or somebody and figure out like what's the status of something being processed. And then what do you immediately hear when you call? Like this 16-step menu that you have to listen to and then pick 15 selections before you even actually talk to someone if you ever do. Mm-hmm. And so we started exploring like, that's a pain, right? If it's a pain for me, I know it's a pain for others. And we did some pulse checks, and this conversational AI solution came into play, and we deployed it. We've been happy with it. It really makes it easier for our team members to get access to things, whether it's an IT specific request or we're even expanding into HR and other parts of the organization. So it's really taken off, and it's getting adapted more and more.
Jason, when you were going through that, something in that article that was kind of interesting is that, you talked about really use cases, and, something that I see, I service and focus in the federal business right now. And so I always get asked a lot of questions in finance and in supply chain on, what are the use cases, what can you apply to? Like you said, you don't want to do technology for technology's sake. And, customer service definitely is a part of it, HR and administration part. But, people are like, Troy, what about supply chain? And, you try to kind of go through. And, I think the areas of supporting supply chain, like procurement, being able to kind of digest, thousands of contracts, thousands of statements of work, and then query them, say, I want to put somebody on contract to do procure to pay, and I need to make sure that they have the standard Toyota terms, et cetera, and pretty soon can generate that administrative part that a lot of times, even you and I doing business in the past, there's the stuff that we really should do, which is the work, and then the administrative stuff of getting stuff set took forever. But I was just kind of curious your view of developing use cases and a process to identify them.
So it's a partnership inside Toyota Motor North America, right? As far as how we identify those things, I use peers across One Tech. We've even recently assigned someone to be the head of enterprise AI, so we can really dive deep into the applicability across the end-to-end value chain of Toyota. So, whether it's, going back to how we implemented and I brought forward robotics process automation a few years ago, it's like, if you really spend the time and understand the operation from the operator, from the team member's perspective, you'll find windows of opportunities, whether that's an automation through a technology like RPA, or it's something more emerging like with generative AI. You can't go a day without hearing those 5 letters, right? Anymore. So we're still evolving and still identifying these use cases. Like you said, approvals is another area where we're really focused. Like you got to get your core work done, the stuff that's really going to move the needle. But at the end of the day, as a leader of people, you got a queue of emails of things you've got to approve. So the conversational AI can put those in a simple list, and you can just in one place see everything you need to take care of. And so you're doing it in seconds rather than figuring out, I got to go sign in to the procurement system, the accounting and finance system, the time system, whatever it is.
And being able to kind of go through. You used a term I just want to clarify for the listeners, One Tech. I think that's the branding for the IT organization at this point.
Yeah,
correct?
Thanks for pointing that out. One Tech is the name of our technology division here inside of TMNA.
What I wanted to do also is talk a little bit about kind of leadership in the technology space, especially in automotive. I talked about, a little bit at the beginning about the reading the books and being able to go through and that's just one component. That's just bringing thought leadership and ideas into kind of advanced discussions. You and I talked about, a book that, we thought was pretty interesting, which is that CEO Excellence book that was put out by the partners or senior partners over at McKinsey. And I was just kind of curious, maybe from your perspective, let's talk about the leadership within Toyota from an IT perspective, or IT in general.
Yeah. So for me, some of my leadership thoughts are how do I be authentic every single day I come to work, right? And I really feel like, given that, like you said, we started working together on the corporate services at Plano, a decade ago. How do you establish those new relationships with people, and how do you get them to trust you and to see that your mission is the same as their mission? And I really feel like that's bringing your authentic self to work every day, starting to really emphasize the relationships that you need to build, to talk about the personal aspects and the professional aspects. And as those relationships get established, you start to build trust, and then through trust comes loyalty. And, for me, I know technology, as great as it can be, it breaks. So if you're counting on me to ensure that the systems that, run your operation are up, and providing as much productivity to you as possible, at times something's going to happen, right? So I feel like, part of that is you understand how difficult my job is. I understand how difficult your job can be, and that we understand that, okay, something happened, but I know Jason's on it. It just changes that dynamic of how you work with people over time. And then, getting into the books and the CEO excellence, I think part of how I operate drew me to Toyota, because Toyota is very like Toyota DNA. It's very framework oriented, right? And, I truly believe in having a framework for how I, think about people excellence, leadership excellence, execution excellence, and operational excellence. And so when I ran across the CEO Excellence book, has a lot of time saying excellence. What I loved about it, like you said, McKinsey partners, but it was written in a way that they define like a six-step framework, everything from, setting the vision to managing the board to actually getting things done for themselves. And then they interviewed the most successful CEOs and how they thought about it. So you felt like you were in dialogue with all of these CEOs, and you had access to how they thought about every part of the business that they're responsible for. So I look for little opportunities like that to then highlight and take a chance to say, I'm going to incorporate that into my style or my day-to-day. And that's really what I challenge team members when I provide an opportunity to join me in a book is it's not so much the reading of the book, it's what are your takeaways? What can you apply tomorrow that you didn't apply today that can make you even 1% better?
That book, and again, this Scott Keller, Carolyn Dwyer, awesome book. When I read books like that, you could say I'm full of myself and I'm reading it because I want to be a good CEO, but we aren't CEOs right here, right? So, but the paradigm there is very similar. The one stats that stuck out in my head was like 30% of the CEOs fail in the first 3 years. And so you think about, and this is for public Fortune 500 companies. So Fortune 500 of the 500 third, that's a lot of, and then, usually 2/5 or probably about 2/5 of the CEOs within the first 18 months, the board already has started to lose confidence in them. And, so when I say there's a paradigm, it's like you can apply that to being your first time manager. You can apply that to being a general manager, a CIO. When I went into DHS and went through Senate confirmation, I ended up, in DHS. I work directly with the secretary, and that process in government isn't necessarily that these are experienced political people that have ran 250,000 people organizations. They're good policy people. Some of them have ran, and when you have that much ability to influence government, if you don't really kind of have good framework or parameters, you can start following policies on crazy paths. And I don't mean bad. I'm not making judgment, but when you start doing that, you start whipsawing 250,000 people. It is a pretty significant problem. And as a taxpayer, when we got in there, I was like, let's be a little calm and try to see if we can kind of work through that. And I think this book, The CEO Excellence, it was, the parameters, I think was, it was interesting because I think when people get into that role, also, being in public service, mayors and on boards from the counties and stuff, you see somebody come in as the leader of an organization, and they really, some of them manage the board too much and they don't do their job, and some of them get caught up in the details and they forget the board's there. And I don't know. So I think when I think about taking it to today, where you and I are at, I think it's a good paradigm to be able to look as a person that wants to be a successful manager of anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just because, like you said, we're not CEOs in the definition of a CEO, but we're CEOs of our respective areas.
That's right.
And so, how do you think more broadly, right? How do you think like a CEO every day? And I really I think it reinforces that kind of thinking way. There's still like remember the VP CIO that I mentioned earlier that helped with a critical pivot in my career at Toyota. She used to always say when we would take a Ringy show document, a business case to her for funding, like, would you spend this with your own personal money? And just grounding you in the fact that, like, yes, okay,
Yeah.
if this was my money, would I really, invest in what I'm pushing? And so just subtle things like that, helps in changing the mindset and changing the way you think about how you approach your day.
Some of the current policies that are kind of in the news right now that potentially affect technology is the return to office type policies that are out there. Obviously I'm at IBM and this is in the media, so this is not something and I've seen some stuff out there about Toyota, but for IBM, basically they were basically requiring anybody, manager and executives, to be in the office 3 days a week, and very quickly, that might go all the way down to all people. In consulting, our job should be at clients and be, because that's where we're at. But clients aren't fully open, so you and I are kind of sitting across from each other. We're not in business together now, but looking and almost as a union rep for each side of this, it's like, the clients don't have a place for us sometimes, or they didn't want us now. Now they are trying to kind of get through. And it seems like we're just in an interesting point. Some of the visceral reaction people have is like, well, if I can't be remote, I'm not going to stay here. And, I think, that has longer term implications. I was just kind of curious, like your take of the return to office and how do you think that affects, your area specifically, just to kind of keep it grounded.
Yeah, Troy, I mean, like you said, it seems to be evolving, flipping back and forth, right, since the pandemic. And like you said, within Toyota, a lot of emphasis on trying to get back in the office a little bit more, but not mandating, 5 days back pre-COVID. But for me, return to office, of course, I think there's different aspects of it. You've got a lot of people coming into the their working career. They really need to be spending time with people. I think if you're someone 0 to 5 years out of college, it is harder if you're only remote to really establish some of those relationships, unless the company really is very thoughtful about how they bring people in, and do things on a regular cadence, monthly, quarterly, whatever it is. Like you said, I think it's easier for those that have maybe tenured and have been with the company a long time. They know how to make those connections with people because they've worked with them every day. But for me, like I still go, it's grounded back in how we communicate, and how we build the right channels to make sure people feel connected to still the top line objectives and goals that we're trying to achieve. They know exactly how the work that they're doing connects to that, and whether they're remote or physically in an office, then they're understanding.
Yeah.
But I will say, last comment on that is, it has opened up an opportunity to bring in a lot of talent, especially from a technology perspective, by not having to hire just in one specific location, right? Especially as more and more, like you talked about, movement of companies from California. Texas is getting a lot of insert of companies into the state, and so it's very competitive when it comes to finding good talent. So being able to look more broadly across the U.S. has certainly helped.
One other just last question on that point before we move off and get to the closing is because we set the framework around IT a little bit from your experience and mine is like people that kind of maintain stuff, to keep the lights on or keep the operations moving. A lot of that is, everybody knows the ecosystem, everybody knows what's going on. The second part of our job sometimes in technology is to implement new things. And, and I think, that in-person part, we're sitting here at headquarters and I remember many times getting shut into one of these with like 5 or 10 people with a business problem. And we start with all these walls in this building you could write on, and they got a lot of writing on them. And we work through very hard things. And My personal observation is like, I really felt like on the implement side, which is, by the way, when consultants get the most, that's when they kind of earn their money.
Sure.
I really was kind of concerned we were selling ourselves a little short in our ability to help, but it was kind of mutual because the clients didn't want us together too. I was just kind of curious, bigger picture. Do you think that, is there a little bit of you inside that thinks, this return to office might help come up with more creative things, especially when you're doing a battery plan or stuff like that? Or do you think this remote it will be a full service now that we've had 4 years to mature it?
Well, it's a good point. And the fact that you reference manufacturing too is, I have to say, right, manufacturing never got to work remote.
That's right.
So they've been in there since we put in the right precautions, producing vehicles, and we'll do the same at the battery plant, right? When it comes to those that are fortunate to have the option, if they can, to work remote, there is something to the collaboration. Mm-hmm. Of course, tools are advancing, whiteboard techniques and things like that. But I've seen over the last couple of years since we've been remote, like if we can bring people together and they all come into the same location, in 5 days of workshopping, we can knock out probably 3 to 6 months of actual just 30-minute, 60-minute phone calls. So there is a productivity hit there, and I do think it helps short cycle, getting to some of that creativity and the collaboration, what you need to move at a pace and make proper decisions timely.
Yeah, I think the hybrid definitely, we've learned to, when we do get together, to make the most of it. And like you said, kind of a full-on infusion. It was funny, I won't name a client specifically, but I was out somewhere and they're trying to do return to office, and everybody's in the office on Teams. It's like, come on, seriously? Like, so at some point, and that'll be a client thing to deal with. And, on the consulting side, we're a little bit more direct with people. It's like, we're getting paid good money and the client has high expectations, but, we need to put in the time and really try to kind of help facilitate to the conference room, because that's why we're all together. But I don't know if you see that a little bit.
100%. And that's where I think, like, to me, there's the two different types of work, synchronous work and asynchronous work. Like, there are times when we need to be sitting across the table from one another or bringing in others and using these painted walls to whiteboard. But then, I can say within other companies, right, there are too much synchronous meetings for things that could be done asynchronously, right? Like, create a real-time document, let people post what they're working on there. And so you don't need to bring people together to ask for status on something, right? So I think we're trying to figure out how to leverage those different techniques and pivot, so it's bring the ultimate productivity back to the team members so that they're working on the right things.
Oh, that's awesome. So Jason, as we get near the end here, kind of closing thoughts and kind of perspective is, what would be something you'd want to leave with the listeners from all of your experience? We've talked about coming out from the beginnings of Kentucky at UK and then working your way into Toyota and all the different experiences. You've been filling out your career bingo card. And then now you've got this significant futuristic charge at Toyota at the battery plant, and continuous improvement mindset. Any thoughts that you think might be helpful for people that are out there, like looking at Toyota as a model and or in technology?
I appreciate the question. From a technology leader perspective, right? When I think about some of the tenets of Toyota, it's really, no matter what you're trying to do, you have to spend time at the Gemba, which is the place of work, the actual place of work, right? So put a lot of emphasis on, you can't just sit in an office or at your home, wherever, and figure out what the right technology solution is unless you actually go and see. Mm-hmm. So that's truly a requirement. And then building on, taking away from some of the Amazon principles, right? Working backwards. Mm-hmm. Again, the same kind of principle from the place of work, working backwards, and always trying to keep a holistic end-to-end approach. I think it's easy to get silos and blinders and only think about, maybe your respective area today. Mm-hmm. But how do you think about what you're doing and how it could span the broader enterprise? And then I would conclude by saying, be bold. I've said this a few times, but I really think as technology leaders, we need to make some bold bets. Mm-hmm. That's something that I try to practice and try to reinforce across my teams. Again, like you said, technology is always the easy part. Mm-hmm. But where you leverage those relationships when you want to get something implemented, it's, how do you create a culture of change? How do you get people to be acceptable to change? And then how do you show that you're going to develop the people and give them an opportunity to build new skill sets? Mm-hmm. That's where, as technology leaders, where you still need to be spending most of your time if you're going to make a transformation successful. So be bold and focus more than just on the technology itself.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, hey, on a personal note, because I also do follow you a little bit on social media, the thing that you're probably one guy that has competed with me and doing a lot of running type activity. I think I've even seen a couple mud runs out there. It's interesting. It's like the last couple of days in Dallas been pretty stormy. And so is it mud running season at this point, or have you stepped away from that a little bit?
I'll just say when I moved from Kentucky to Texas, I thought it was always warm here. Yeah. But the winters seem to be getting progressively colder and colder. So it's becoming a 4 seasons almost.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. Well, Jason, thank you so much for taking the time and meeting with me. It's so good getting back together and maintaining our relationship. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, same, Troy. Great to be on the podcast, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thank you. Thanks again for joining me today on the Ameritocracy Show. Be sure to follow me on social media and our website at troyedgar.com, where you can get more information and sign up for my weekly email. I hope you have a great week.